Thank you very much, and good evening. Welcome to tonight's Meadville Tribune Forum for the candidates running for the PENNCREST School Board in the May 21st primary. And we want to welcome the audience here at Secretariat High School, as well as those listening on Cool 101.7 FM, and those who are watching, unfortunately not live, but on tape delay on Armstrong cable. I'm Keith Gushert. I'm one of the reporters at the Meadville Tribune, and with me is Rick Green. He's the paper's editor. Now, before we start, I do want to ask those in the audience, just take a moment to turn off any cell phone that they may have. That way they won't create a distraction for folks. We thank you very much. And we appreciate the candidates appearing here this evening to be questioned about important issues facing the PENNCREST School District and its students and parents and taxpayers. And those are the folks in the Cambridge Springs, Sagertown, and Maplewood attendance areas. With us this evening are, not in particular order, I just have my list here, Harry Hicks, we have Jennifer Davis, Bill Sleptzoff, Timothy Brown, Jeff Brooks, Luigi Di Francesco. They're all seeking one of the 4-year terms on the board. We also have with us Brian Lynch and Gerry Deane. They are seeking a 2-year term that is on the ballot. They're all seeking the nominations. We did invite David Valesky, and I spoke with Mr. Valesky today. He was aware of the forum. He said he wasn't sure whether he was coming, so we'll just leave it at that. So we'll go with the 8 candidates we have. Now what we're going to do at the opening is we're going to allow each candidate up to 2 minutes for an introduction of themselves, and then we'll start questioning the candidates, and each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer the question. We drew lots. That's why they're seated in the order that they are in. We'll start with Mr. Sleptzoff. And Mr. Sleptzoff, you have up to 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Sleptzoff. I've been in the PENNCREST School District since 1976. And I've always been interested in education since I used to be a school teacher myself. I've had recently just retired from the tool and die trade for 30 years. And I think the most important thing that we are trying to accomplish in running for school board is to make sure we have the best education that we can have for the amount of money that we're going to be spending. Students are the most important thing, and the taxpayers are also as important. I think that'll be it for time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Deane, we will start with you in a moment. Just as a reminder to the candidates, the folks here, the folks listening and watching, we do have a yellow card that we'll hold up when you got 30 seconds to go, and then a red card, so if you see us waving that. Ms. Deane, not to take you away from anything, you have up to 2 minutes to talk about yourself, please.
Thank you. It is nice to have a forum to talk to everybody and to be televised and to be on Cool 101. I am Gerry Deane. I am a PENNCREST retired teacher. I also own my own business. I moved from Meadville to Sagertown in 1996. I am a direct descendant of David Meade, who founded Meadville, and I was raised by my parents in Meadville to give back to the community. I'm going to stop for a minute. Okay?
Please keep going. I'm sorry about the technical problem.
So serving on the school board, this is my, I served for 4 years. I was not reelected. We had a vacancy. I applied for the vacancy and was appointed to fill out a term. And I am seeking the 2-year position to finish that term. I do believe that kids are our first priority. They are our future. They are going to take care of us as we age, and they are the employers in employment that is going to be taking care of us throughout the century. So we have to balance the taxes. We have to balance what is best for the kids, given the limitations. We also need to change what is going on in Harrisburg with cyber school and the way funding is done for cyber school, because that is a huge part of the budget. And hopefully with the new legislation, those things will be taken care of. So I am running for the 2-year position. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Brian Lynch. Mr. Lynch, you have the floor.
My name is Brian Lynch. I have my own business. I drive a truck. lived here for 26 years, moved up from Pittsburgh. I don't have any kids, but I'm a taxpayer, and I want to make sure that, you know, our taxes are spent properly. School board members and educators and administrators come and go. Salaries wax and wane, but you only get one chance in many cases to educate a student. For a good percentage of the students, this will be the only education they will get, so you have to give them your best. A lot of the senior class will be eligible to vote in the next presidential election. A poll came out today stating 52% of Americans view capitalism favorably. That means the other 48% either have no opinion or would like something different. I believe we are not doing our job in teaching our students critical thinking skills in history to show them how America has been exceptional. I hear a lot of people saying how America is bad and how capitalism is bad, but more innovation has come from America in the last 100 years and has truly transformed this world. Ma Bell controlled the phone system for 50 plus years. After it was forced to break up the monopoly, look how fast in the last 30 years phone technology has advanced. The same could be said for government. If you have all the government controlling all the aspects of research and innovation, advancements will stagnate. The proof is in the innovation coming out of China or Russia, is what they steal from us. I realize it's a bit heavy for a school board, but these young people are our future, and we have to safeguard and train them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you're up next.
Thank you. Hello and good evening. My name's Tim Brown. I am currently on the school board, and I am up for running for a 4-year term. I've spent my entire life in this district. I graduated from Cambridge Springs High School. My 3 daughters have graduated from Cambridge Springs High School. And my wife is also a teacher, so my family is very much invested in this district. I spent 8 years in the United States Army Reserves. I have been part of the Little League softball organization in Cambridge Springs for 10 years. And my passion is on the school board is kind of to mimic what other people have already said, is our students do come first. And we are responsible for the taxes, make sure they are spent properly. And making sure that our students have what they're going to need to succeed. That is one thing that is very crucial. Having 3 daughters of my own, I understand how this works. I've seen how it works. That's why I want to stay on and finish out what we got started. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Jennifer Davis. Ms. Davis, you have up to 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Jen Davis. I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight to learn about the candidates for our district. I'm a Maplewood parent. My husband Brian and I have 4 children at Maplewood. We have a kindergarten and 4th grade student at the elementary, and we have a 7th and 11th grade student at the high school. So we spend a lot of time at both of those schools. I'm also a bus driver at the Maplewood attendance area. My days are spent with the students, interacting with the teachers and the administration over in the Maplewood area. And sometimes I venture over to Cambridge and Sagertown, depending on what other sports and other activities are going on. I'm originally from South Jersey. That was not where I wanted to raise my family. So we relocated here about 7 years ago. We wanted peace and quiet. We wanted to get out of the, it's just overcrowded. A lot of crime, a lot of, just a sad situation where I'm from. So to come here, to have the wide open space, to have the sense of community, very open arms we were welcomed with the administration and the staff over at the elementary school when we moved here. We quickly decided that this is where we wanted to stay. We felt that there was a really good balance with the sense of community, old-time values, but still there was a quality education and our children still had a future with the things that they would learn here. Since then, we've hit some rough patches, and frankly, I started wondering if maybe we made a mistake. We watched a lot of teachers, we watched important programs that my children valued taken away from us because of issues with budget and disinterest. It was really hard to watch. But things have started to change. I've seen a huge turnaround just in the last few years with our current board members.
Ms. Davis, I'm sorry to have this aside.
I missed the yellow part.
Mr. Deane, Francesco?
My name is Luigi Del Francesco. I am a retired civil engineer with experience in maintenance of buildings and grounds, also familiar with environmental laws such as safe drinking water and waste management. I formerly served as a project engineer for the United States Coast Guard, as assistant civil engineer for the city of Meadville, as sanitary engineer for the Department of Environmental Protection, and a member of the Richmond Township Planning Commission Board. I've served on the PENNCREST School Board for 8 years, and I hope that you will allow me to complete my work to improve the students' education and avoid unnecessary spending. No one likes tax increases, but I won't go for one unless it's absolutely necessary, and after all, unnecessary spending is definitely. That's all I have to say.
Next up is Ms. Hicks.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for being interested enough to watch and listen to tonight's forum. Basically, my primary interest is in the curriculum within the school district. I'm a retired educator from Texas. I taught middle school, high school, was a high school principal, and taught college there. My wife and I moved up here in 2005 into Richmond Township with 2 young children. I have one student that completed school in PENNCREST and one that is currently attending PENNCREST schools. I served for several years in the Air National Guard and the Air Force Reserve. Attended school in Georgia, Texas, and recently completed a degree at Edinburgh University. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you very much. And next up is Jeff Brooks. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, everybody, for making it out this evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Brooks. I'm a Maplewood alumni, U.S. Navy vet, and a graduate of Edinburgh University. I'm currently honored to be serving as the Vice President on our school board, and I'm the proud father of 3 children who are Sagertown Panthers. The youngest is still here in 7th grade. For the past year and a half, I've been serving our district, and I'm encouraged by all the accomplishments we've made to try to keep our district moving forward for our students and our community as a whole. The list of accomplishments we've done over the last year and a half is pretty impressive when you look back at it, but I'm just going to share some of the few key things that we've done. We've worked diligently to search out a superintendent, assistant superintendent, and new staff that are here to empower our district and to implement more efficient and thorough services in our schools. Students' learning schedules are changing to improve the quality of instruction as well as allow for learning opportunities that intentionally prepare our kids for life after graduation. The board meetings have become more transparent, community-friendly. We've been proactive in engaging the district's business sector and emergency responders to improve communication channels. We worked with the teachers union for a 5-year deal that's fair to the teachers and the taxpayers. It's improved our position in regard to health care, had the lowest increase in salary of all but one district in all of northwestern Pennsylvania, and it's significantly less than any of the deals being signed today. We're making capital improvements to our schools so that they're in place that the students and parents can feel safe and welcomed in some places we can take pride of here in PENNCREST. In short, as a community, we're getting things done for our kids and in ways that are cost-effective to taxpayers. I hope that when considering who to vote for, you're considered candidates who've chosen to put our kids first and supported all of these great accomplishments. I'm committed to PENNCREST, and I'm proud to be a part of all the great things happening here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start our first question. Mr. Sleptzoff, this with you. Monday's work session recommended real estate taxes in PENNCREST increased by $500,000 for Crawford County residents and $0.05 mils for the Meadville County portion of Plum Township. And that's all the balance of $53 million budget. How do you feel about raising taxes to pay for education?
I don't mind raising taxes for an education, but I'd prefer it would be a income tax. I don't believe in a property tax at all. It's the most regressive tax we could have for our education. It's important that we have the monies that we need for the schools, but it's also important to be fair and equal. Working in the tool and die trade, when we were slow, we didn't get a reduction in our taxes in order to help us out. If we were on an income tax, then we could end up paying that tax if we're working. And if we have a property tax, we can end up losing our homes. Thank you.
Unfortunately, until Harrisburg changes the laws, the school districts have no other recourse than property tax. I don't want to raise taxes. I'm not in favor of raising taxes to raise taxes. This school district has been very diligent in not raising taxes over the past years. We have cut the budget reserve as far back as we possibly can. Unfortunately, $500,000, I think, comes out to like $20 a year. I don't think that that is astronomical compared to what the county commissioners did at 14%. So until Harrisburg changes how schools are paid and how schools collect money, we are stuck with property tax. Thank you.
Mr. Lynch?
Well, I'm not really against tax increases, but I want to see how it directly benefits the students and not just the teachers and the unions and such. You know, I have elderly neighbors that are fixed incomes, and $20 doesn't sound like much, but you know, if a neighbor, she only makes $600 a month, and by the time she pays for rent and food and stuff, there's not really anything left. So that $20, you know, it adds up, and like you're saying down there, you could lose your house over it. So that's a consideration I would have with a tax increase, of how it's going to affect, you know, my neighbors directly and how it's going to benefit the students directly.
Thank you. Mr. Stone?
Thank you. The tax increase, like everybody else, I pay taxes too, and it stinks. But we have done a tremendous job on cutting the fat out of our budget. It's not perfect. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it is. But we have done a lot of work to get it very close. And this tax increase, if we do vote this in, this isn't a definite, but if we did vote this in, all this is going to do is keep us from falling behind. And $500,000 versus, I think the last time we did a full mill, somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, and that was 3 years ago, I believe. Yes. So $500,000 is, I think, comes out to $150-some thousand, I believe. Luigi could correct me. All this is doing is help keep us above water. If we never raise the taxes and keep saying, well, we're going to keep cutting, then we're going to go back to what we did a few years ago. We're going to start cutting programs for the kids. We're going to start cutting education. We'll start furloughing teachers. I see it. Thank you. So if we do a little bit here, a little bit there, that'll help keep us above and allow us to keep putting money back in so we can keep fixing the roofs and putting bleachers in and doing work, maintenance on our buildings. This is very important. That's good. I'm getting the card.
I think I would have to echo Mrs. Deane and Mr. Brown touched on. I haven't been on this board, I'm not as familiar with specific numbers. From what I've received, it's about it. And I think that is something that would have to be constantly reevaluated, constantly looked at, constantly improved. Because nobody wants to see taxes increase. That impacts everybody in our community. But also, if our children are suffering and our children are not getting the education that they need, that's going to impact our community as well. So it's not only the future of our kids that I'm concerned about, it's the fact that these kids are the ones that are going to be taking care of us. And as much as I don't want to hit any of us in the pocketbook, I think we have to make sure that it's constantly reevaluated and not let to fall so far behind in the future.
Mrs. Steve Francesca?
Yes. Well, we all know that taxes are unnecessary evil. But before taxes are raised, the taxpayers want to assure that there are no unnecessary spending, and all the money that the taxpayers pay goes towards the education of the children and of the students. Personally, I really cannot support a tax increase when no matter how small it is or big it is, when the median earnings of a family of four in Crawford County is $44,000 per 365 days a year in Crawford County. And the school property tax is the highest of the three that the residents of Crawford County have to pay. So, yes, we need money to educate the kids. And 2/3 of the taxes of the budget actually is going to personnel, which is part of the education for the kids, of course. But the problem is we have too many people that are below average earnings. And we got too many people, like the baby boomers like myself, that have to live on fixed income. So what is the solution? The solution is we got to be careful how we spend our money. We got to make sure that we don't keep going the same way they've been going for the past 30 years or 40 years. Well, the best solution that as retiree will have is that it's time for the legislature to come together and to eliminate the property tax for schools. The Constitution is very, very clear that the responsibility to educate the kids is the responsibility of all in Pennsylvania, not just property taxes. So it's time that the legislature get going and eliminate the property taxes for schools.
Mr. Hicks, you're up.
As Luigi said, taxation is a necessary evil. Unfortunately, it's the only way the school district has to raise funds in order to operate. We need to think about the future. The future is the students. The people who make sure the students are educated are the taxpayers. And our primary concern should be making sure we get the most in education for the money we invest due to taxation. If we're not guaranteeing the students are getting the maximum education they can get, the taxation is wasted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brooks?
Nobody likes a tax increase, but unfortunately in the school board, that's the only tool we have. If all we have is a hammer, then the whole world is a nail, and you just use the tool that you have. I grew up on a farm with a single mom working as a receptionist for a doctor's office. We were what we say around here is land rich and money poor, and she taught me, the effect of taxes and every dollar that we spend. She also taught me that we have community responsibility, that we have to do what's right for other people, not just for ourselves. And one of the things here on the school board that I take serious is that we have a job to do, and that's to make sure that our students have the best possible education that we can provide them for our area. A small tax increase now or a large tax increase later is the way that this is all going to boil out no matter where you're at. The county just hit a huge tax increase this year because they hadn't had one for 7 years. I don't know if it's better for someone to have a giant tax increase or a small one, but even if we do have the small tax increase, next year we're looking at over $1 million deficit in our budget already. This year we cut some spending, we cut about $900,000. We had a boon in our revenue for a one-time deal where we gained an extra $900,000. These things aren't going to keep happening, but it makes our budget look really good this year. So we have to look towards the future, and when we look at our budgets, that's what we have to do. If we can't look past the end of our noses, then we're not going to get any better. And that's what we've been doing, unfortunately, for too long, is not thinking about where this is going to take us. When we talk about cutting unnecessary spending, the definition of unnecessary changes for every one of us. We're cutting librarians, we're cutting all kinds of services because those are unnecessary. And that's not what I think unnecessary is. I think that at some point in time, our wages for our kids are not going to go up if we don't provide them a better education to go out and earn more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, we want to start with Ms. Deane. And this question is, should an elected official or a candidate for office be held accountable for their posts on social media, and why or why not?
I stay off social media, so,
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I will, Ms. Deane, I'll repeat it when we get to you down the line. Ms. Deane?
okay. I don't believe so. Social media is here to stay, and it can be used as a weapon against you, and you have no recourse. People post what they want to post. They believe what they want to believe, whether it's true or not. I know a lot of people have been hacked socially, so I have a hard time believing that everybody should be held accountable, especially if they were hacked. But I think that if you're going to be on social media and you're going to post on social media and you personally are posting, then yes, I think you should be held accountable for what you say.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Mr. Lynch. Again, same question. Should an elected official or a candidate for office be held accountable for their posts on social media, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think if they're going to go ahead and be on social media, then they need to be held accountable. You can't just be out there just flaming people and then, have no repercussions. You can't just libel somebody and not have any consequences. We got freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences to what you say. So like you, I just kind of stay off of it just because I don't really see any value in it, for my own personal benefit. So a lot of people use it to get their ideas and views out. And so I think to an extent they should be held accountable. I mean, you should be able to give your opinion and not have to face legal. If you go and attack somebody, then I would say I'd probably have a different view on it if it was found to be not true.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, we're up to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually, I think you should be held accountable if you're an elected official or, running for elected office. I think we're held at a somewhat higher standard. And if you're on social media and you're talking about other people who may have voted for you or could vote for you, those are your constituents. And whether you like them or agree with them, as Mr. Lynch said, we have a right to voice our different opinions and views, and that's how great ideas come about. But to be on social media, to be bashing other outfits you don't like, or if you don't like public education, you bash them, or what have you, yeah, I think you should be held accountable for that. We should be held at a higher standard.
All right, thank you. Ms. Davis?
I think I would have to echo everything else that's been said. It's a matter of integrity. I think you need to be honest about what your views are, and be respectful to others if they're different than yours. So accountability, that's very important.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. DeFrancesco?
Well, it's pretty hard to get anybody accountable, anything to say anyway, especially on social media. We did have an incident in Meadville. A public official should be respectful no matter what, because it always comes back to you. Nobody should call anybody else liars or express their hate towards an individual or another elected official. But to make him accountable, I don't know. The only way we can make any public official accountable is to vote him out of office. So if somebody misbehaves and they don't like what they say, then the recourse is the polls. Period. But the punishment for being stupid and to put nonsense on social media and espouse hate against somebody that you don't like, well, that's pretty dumb. And I think the voters should have the final say on what to do with this public official.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hicks?
First of all, whatever's posted online is forever. Other people pick it up, copy it, and paste it forward. It is true that social media is hacked. People go into other people's accounts, put linkage to it, and send it out as if it was in their original person's post when they had nothing to do with it. When you go into social media, you need to think about the long-range effect of what you're doing and what the future will be, and be respectful of everyone you can. And thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you. I use social media a lot. On Facebook, I try to recap what's happening in our district, and there's quite a few people that see that, and it's a way that we can get out to people. When you look at who's here in the audience, the number of people that come to our board meetings, there's only so much reach you can get from that. Even as great a job as the Tribune does coming and covering our meetings, there's only so many people that get it that way, and social media is a way that people get that. One of the things that happens on these is there's more of a reach to what you say, and there is responsibility, and you are accountable for what you say. There's been posts I've put out, and they'll be shared, and there'll be 8,000 people that see a post that I put out there that tells them what's happening here in PENNCREST. So I'm very aware of what I put out there, and I try to make sure that everything I'm putting out there is positive as it can be, but it's also truthful. I do agree with Luigi that the voters are the ultimate accountability for all elected officials, that's really the only thing that matters. And I know that there's been people critical of how I've reached out to our state representative on things, and it's our civic responsibility to hold all elected officials accountable. We talk about our rights a lot, but it's our responsibility to make sure people know what we feel. And I feel like I've opened the doors since I've been on the board for people to reach out to me, and I know others have too. And I think that I welcome it. I welcome people holding me accountable for my own words. That being said, there's some things that pop up on Facebook memories that I look at and think, maybe I shouldn't have posted that in the past, but before I was a candidate or an elected official. But some of that stuff is funny. But I have to get rid of it off of social media. And and you do that because as you get older, things change, and you're more of a public figure, so you grow up and you accept responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sleptzoff?
I think that social media is an extraordinary tool that we can use to communicate with people. I remember when my brother was over in Baghdad, when my nephew was over in Afghanistan, I was able to keep in contact with him. And that's, a great asset. But like any tool, it can be misused. And people misuse it all the time. I've seen some very hateful things published on Facebook. Right now, with, the media clamping down on things that, free speech, I have a problem looking at that. At the same time, I think we need to be aware of what's going on, and when we make a post, to be aware of other people and their feelings and what they're thinking. Going out and gratuitously attacking someone should not be condoned by anyone.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're going to switch things up in that I'm going to take a seat. Rick's going to ask the next couple questions, and I'll be taking care of the time clock. So I think our arms are about the same length. Hopefully the sides will be there. Rick has our next question.
Good evening, and again, I want to thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it for you taking the time out of your schedules and showing up for the forum here tonight. Graduation season is just around the corner. What do you think people say about PENNCREST graduates when they move on to the next phase of life? And what do you hope people would say about them? And this next question would go to Mr. Lynch.
Well,
hope they look back at the school and figure they got a good education, but I've been looking at the statistics for our school district, and we've been falling further and further back in the ratings, in the standings statewide. I think I saw in 2007 we were like 158 out of 430 districts. I can't remember exact numbers, but now I'm seeing we're like in the 250 range. So kind of wondering what's going on with our education, that we're falling so far behind with the standings statewide compared. So I would hope they would look back and say they got a good education, but at the same time I want to make sure that we're doing what we can to provide the best we can for them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, you're next.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. When graduates go out to the next phase of life, whether it's college or trade school or into the workforce, what do you think people are saying about the graduates from PENNCREST, and what do you want people to say about those graduates?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. I just attended my daughter's graduation at Edinburgh last past Saturday, and there was never got the exact number. There was a large number of PENNCREST students graduating with a bachelor's degree from Edinburgh. And a few people I talked to, it was encouraging. The students were coming in and they were prepared. I think the employers, I hope that they're coming in prepared, but talking to employers lately, I think there's a few things that we're missing, and we've started a community work coalition program, and we've been working with some local people to businesses and discussing what we're going to change in our curriculum to help update some of the programs they're getting. So what they're saying now, I'm hoping it's positive, but I know what they're going to say in the future will be positive because we're making those changes. The students coming out prepared, I think it's like anything. The education they get is, they get out of it what they put into it. And I know a lot of the teachers here they're giving it all they've got, and they put their heart and soul into it. And I know a lot of these students coming out, we talk to them after their sports and stuff, and there's a lot of successful students coming out of here. So I'm positive on the direction we're going from where we were a few years ago. We've definitely turned a corner.
Okay. Thank you. Go to Jennifer Davis. Ms. Davis?
Well, I think that the students that will be graduating this year and the next few years have some tremendous strengths. And there are kids that are, most of them, have gained a lot from the district. I think there are hopes. I think that our teachers, being awesome, and I think we have some just absolutely wonderful, dedicated teachers that have found ways to fill in the gaps where the district was struggling. And so I think that any student that's graduating could find their way, but there are times that they're going to have to work harder than some other schools. I have an 11th grade student. She's an excellent student. She's National Honor Society induction is next week. I'm very proud of her. But there are some things that she's terrified of going to college because she knows that she is not going to measure up in comparison to some of the kids that she's going to be in school with. So I'm grateful for like Mr. Brown said, I think we have turned a corner. I think there's hope for the students coming behind her. But I think there's a lot more work to do to make sure that these kids don't just have tremendous strengths, but that across the board, there are no gaps to be filled.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeFrancesco.
What I would like to hear other people say about our graduates. Well, I would like to hear how well they perform in the school, how much of a promised future they have because of the education they got in PENNCREST. And I can attest to that because I got four children that I graduated from Maplewood a few years back. And they all, those who chose a path of education, went to college, people were amazed that knowledge that they carry with them when they went to higher education. So I think that it's important to educate the kids the right way, to make sure they learn everything they can to be the best they can be in the future. And like I say, I can attest to that because I have two of my kids that graduated from Maplewood and they decided to go to higher education. They're doing real well. One is in Pittsburgh, is a manager in one of the universities, and one is in California as a computer scientist. And they're doing real well, and I do have to thank PENNCREST and the educators that educated them. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Teachers of PENNCREST.
Okay, Mr. Hicks.
As a parent of students that graduated from PENNCREST and still in attendance at PENNCREST, I would like to think that they're thought of as capable and well-educated going out. Having gone to Edinburgh for a couple of years, graduating last year with a new degree, meeting students at Edinburgh, the students I met at Edinburgh that were from the PENNCREST district, and there were quite a few, all of them were doing well that I met and carrying themselves well and leading out from the district, several in sports. I know that the district's sports teams do well. Their reputations carry with them. I've met a lot of students at the Career and Technical Center, and those students are conducting themselves well and go out well prepared in most cases into the fields that they would like to get into. I would like to think that employers would figure that the students coming from PENNCREST were very well educated and capable of doing what they need to do in the workforce. And I haven't heard anything negative. You've got to realize, of course, that every student is different and there is differences in the levels within the students. But looking at that, the district carries well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Our district, the rankings did drop there for a while, and the reason they dropped was as a district, we made the intentional choice not to invest in education. We decided to value other things more than the quality of education we're putting out for our kids, and it showed. So it's not a big mystery as to why we've had some struggles. For a while there, I think PENNCREST was kind of like the girl in high school that looked really good in high school and then didn't do anything for 10 years and went back to her class reunion and still thought she looked good, and she let herself go. Or it could be a guy, it could be me at my class reunion. Right now, PENNCREST is changing. Good things are happening. We've got kids that are getting huge scholarships. We've got kids that are out there. Employers come to our school looking for people. They want people from our schools to go out there and work for them. Things are doing really well in PENNCREST. And what I want them to say is I want them to say what they said when I graduated, that PENNCREST is the best school district that there is, that we get our swagger back and that we try to be excellent, not try to be mediocre, because that's what we've tried to do, and the results have shown it. You know, if you strive to be mediocre and strive to do the least that you can do and provide the least quality of education, that's what you're going to get. You can reach that goal. I really think that our district is poised to take that next step and again become the premier district in Northwest Pennsylvania. And that's what I'd like for people to say about us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff.
Both of my grandchildren have ADHD. PENNCREST, I feel, has failed them. They're both dropped out of school. They're now going to get their GED. We need to somehow catch those students that are lacking in certain skills to be able to succeed. In the tool and die trade, I've watched many years to see, now this is not just PENNCREST, this is the schools around here, where kids come out and don't have the basic skills they need in mathematics. And we have to not just meet the standards of the state, we have to exceed them. We have to exceed the standards for the national level as well. Let's make this the best of the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Deane?
I agree with Mr. Brooks. The district took a hiatus as far as education went. We have definitely seen that with the students. The current board, the current administration has turned the corner. Kids are now back to being number one. Every single child in this district matters to everybody sitting on the board, to the administrators, to the kids, to the teachers, to the support staff. We are only going to be a better school district if we put children first. They are our future. I don't want to have surgery and have a surgeon who was the last in his class. So we've got to put kids first. If you don't put kids first, what are you going to have? You will have no education. You will have nothing, because education creates every job. If you can't read, you can't write, you can't do math, you will not have a society. Education is the basis of everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mr. Brown. Earlier, we discussed your feelings, the candidates' feelings about the proposal on the table to raise taxes in the district. How do you propose to balance the educational needs of the students with the fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers?
Well, the progress that we are making now, we're in that direction. We've been working, actually the administration's been working diligently on retooling, I'll say, our curriculum and getting it more in line with what we can afford, what updates we can afford, and keeping that budget in mind. We've done really well. That's why our budget is in pretty good shape right now. And as Jeff said, next year it's already, or the following one's probably going to be a lot worse. But right now, this one coming up, 2019, 2020, we're looking good. And the administration has done a fantastic job on, we know where we have to be, we know where we want to be. They're trying to keep everything in line with what the taxpayers and what we can afford. And I think we're in the right direction on that part of it. I guess that's about all I got.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
That's a big one for a candidate, someone who hasn't seen all these numbers and been part of the conversation. But from where I've stood so far, I just think things were in bad shape and they're heading in the right direction. I would think that if elected, I would just want to continue moving forward, continue really looking closely, not rushing things to the background. I mean, the realities are in front of us. We have to face them. And I just want to see things keep moving in a good direction. It's not going to change overnight. I think any of us can think that would happen. So, positive attitude, positive direction.
Thank you. Mr. DeFrancesco?
Well, locally we have a superintendent that is thinking in the direction that you just mentioned. Now, the financial health of a PENNCREST is tied to the education of the students. The fiscal responsibility of the board is paramount to have a balance between the educating the children and the students and the taxpayers. I mean, like I said before, the taxpayers are more than willing to pay the taxes if they can trust the board and administration to spend the money wisely and where it's necessary. For example, can the district operate with the same staff that this district had when number of students was over 3,000? We don't have 3,000 students anymore. We know there is an impact on the district with the ongoing downfall of the students' population and the population in general in Crawford County anyway. So what I say is this, The board is responsible to make sure that there are no unnecessary spending. The board should review the use of iPads. The idea of the iPads was as a substitute for books. But I just learned yesterday that students still use some books. So does it really pay for the taxpayer to pay $1 million every 5 years to buy iPads every 5 years? Then we have electronic signs that nobody can read going 30, 40 miles an hour, in each school. Then we use legal services, and the illegal services should be only used when needed in the same way the residents will resort to legal services. Also, why not invite health insurance providers to compete with each other in order to find if there is a less costly way to provide the same health benefits?
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
As I stated earlier, my main interest is curriculum. The main thing that educates students is the curriculum, and what they learn has a direct impact on their future and the future of the community. I think what we really need to do, and not being on the board, I'm not in a position to get into it, but we need to look at cost effectiveness with regard to education and what the output is compared to the input of funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you very much. Property taxes come up about twice a year on the school board. It's really good for elections to talk about property taxes, but the reality is 99% of the time we spend on the school board is on the quality of education we're providing for kids. We talk about it, we make our decision, and that's the framework you have to work with throughout the time for the next year. Quality matters. If we're providing a bad education, $1 is too much to spend for it, and if we're providing a great education, then $1,000 is not enough. The quality is what matters going forward. We have better quality education, we get better graduates, better employees, new businesses open up, we get a better community, and we talk less about low income and how low our median income is and how the district's rising because we're providing better students going out there. If we keep making cuts to the quality, we're not helping our kids down the road. They're not going out there being able to be as successful as they can be. Luigi brought up a good point about the iPads. When that decision was made back in 2013, the rationale behind it was to save money. I think it was going to save about $400,000 that year to save money. It was based just on that is why we made that decision. But we didn't look at the long-term costs. We didn't look at what it was going to take for them to use. Whether it was a lack of research to know what we're getting into, or if it was a lack of knowledge as to what it's going to take to make this program successful, we didn't invest in those, and that put us behind. It's like buying a bunch of new cars and not putting any gas in them. That's how we looked at our iPads. And that's where the difference between fiscal responsibility and education quality matters. You have to look at what's happening, make a decision that's going to be good down the road, not just what's going to be good today. If you just make a short-term decision, then it winds up costing you long-term. Thank you.
Thank you. Make our way back to the other side of the table. Mr. Sleptzoff.
Thank you. It's sometimes difficult to look at these things and decide, what is financially responsible or not. I've looked at this from a teacher's point of view when I taught, and now I'm looking at it from a taxpayer's point of view. I've also seen programs in schools that were mandated by the federal government or the state government. And I think that we really need to start looking at these programs and saying, are they really necessary? I remember subbing one time in a school, and they had a special needs student. And for that one special needs student, they had only one teacher. Now, that teacher did go in and out of other classrooms to help, but I think that's a real waste of our resources and what we need to be doing in our schools. We have to look at the value that we can get from what we're putting in. And that's about it.
Thank you. Ms. Deane?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure.
Sorry,
It's been a few people, so
just a
yeah.
few.
How do you propose to balance the educational needs of the students with the fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers?
Okay. We need to address cyber school. Cyber school is about a $2 million ticket for the taxpayers of PENNCREST. We don't spend, and that's for about 150 students. So do the math. $2 million, 150 kids. Our entire budget is $53 million for 2,800 kids. So there is a huge discrepancy between the $2 million we are spending in cyber school for 150 kids versus what we have for the rest of the students. So cyber school funding has got to be addressed by our elected officials in Harrisburg. Till that is addressed, the cost of cyber school is going to continue to climb exponentially every single year. And that money is taken out before it even gets to the school district. So whatever funding we are getting from Harrisburg, that cyber school money is already taken. And we have no control over what school a child goes to in cyber school or what that bill is going to be, or if even that child is doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up that question with Mr. Lynch.
Well, that's a question that's really better for somebody that's been on the school board and knows the financial situations. I know last year I did try to get some information about some of the expenditures that the school board has made, and I was blocked on multiple levels. I ended up writing the Attorney General and trying to get information, and I was just told it was all private. As a taxpayer, nothing this school board does should be private. If you spend $1, don't you think we all have a right to know where it goes? It just, and then with the cyber schools, it's just going to be an emerging technology. You're not going to get rid of it. We have to find a way to incorporate it and use it to make it more interesting for the students. If you have a teacher that just doesn't really get through to the kids and they find the class boring, social studies are boring for some students, history is boring for others. With the technology that's coming out with cyber, I can't imagine why we can't make some of these classes more interesting to keep the kids involved and keep their interest level up, to make it better for them so they do better in these classes that they're failing or just, they're graduating and not having a grasp of geography and the history of our country and, capitalism versus socialism stuff. They have no idea. So I think we can use these new technologies to better our education.
Okay, thank you. Our next question goes to Jennifer Davis. Since we brought up cyber schools, what is your position on cyber schools and the funding that goes to them from the district? Ms. Davis. Yeah, what is your position on cyber schooling and the funding that goes to them from PENNCREST?
Well, I think it would be cyber schooling is something that isn't going away. I would love to think that every student in the district finds the education they need in the environment that they need and the tools they need and the support that they need to stay in a brick and mortar school. But that is not always the case. I myself had a student that I cyber schooled for about 6 months for a lot of various reasons. It just was not the place for him to come in. I spent a lot of time worrying, losing sleep, crying, praying, wondering what to do, with my student, but I felt like for him at the time, that's what I needed to do. I needed to pull him out of the elementary. He's back there now. He's thriving. He's doing great. Nobody wants to take money directly from my district. I don't think any parent would want to do that. I don't have all the numbers. I think the school board members currently have done a little more research, and I've started to look into it, but whether it's an individual issue like myself, or just, I think, society, is scaring parents at times, that I think there are children that just simply won't be coming to a public school. I don't think it's something we can ignore. So if we're able to make that work for our district in an efficient way, in a way that benefits everyone, I think that's something that's a worthwhile, very important topic to look into. I hope that answered your question. It's a little bit of it's an emotional one for me.
All right, thank you. Mr. DeFrancesco.
The Pennsylvania Constitution clearly states that the Commonwealth supports public education, not public schools or summer schools or any other school. And actually, it does not say specifically public schools. If there is a move to stop funding, it will have to come from the people and the legislators to change the Constitution. This is a situation that cannot be resolved at the school board level. I happen to have read the article the Tribune wrote, I think about a few days ago, and I did some investigation based on the article. And I find out that the cyber schools only receive 78% of the money that the district receives from the state for the students, for each student. So it appears to me the cyber schools do not affect the district financially, for the simple fact that the district will have to spend the money for the students anyway. But if the district will have to we'll get the student, the cyber school coming back to our school, we might have to hire more personnel to teach the additional, and that means that the school will not only have to pay the whatever money they spend on per student, but we have to add 36% towards the pension fund of the teachers that will have to teach this child, this student. So I don't particularly like this cyber school per se, but nothing we can do about it because, like I said, the Pennsylvania Constitution clearly says that we are responsible for public education, and the legislature made the cyber school part of the public education. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Mr. Hicks.
Cyber schools, homeschool, and charter schools are in business to make money. They're a profit-making organization all the way through. None of them are going to go away. Different school students go to the different ones and the different things, and in particular cyber schools, for their own reasons. Some students are not in public school because of something that has happened. Some are in there because of the way their parents feel. What we need to do is work with the state and find a way that the funding for cyber school is not dependent in influencing the funding for the school districts. And I don't mean just PENNCREST, I mean for the entire state. I don't have anything against cyber school. I think it's part of a wave of the future. Most, or I won't say that, a lot of the cyber schools are not as effective as others. Some of the cyber schools are much better than others. Some actually work in conjunction with school districts in some locations. I don't think it's going to go away, but I do think we need to find a way to operate with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Cyber schools, it can be useful. It is an emerging technology, and it's going to be happening. But unfortunately, it's something that can also be misused. I see kids going to cyber school to avoid punishment. I see kids going to cyber school to avoid some sort of consequences at school. and then they come back a year later, and we have to catch them back up. The usefulness of it, I see people that want to graduate early, it's a useful tool. People that have some sort of, they have special needs, it's a very useful tool. If they have bullying issues, or if they have, I know I spoke to a mother whose son's autistic, and she's really the one that showed me the value of cyber schools. Before that, I really thought, let's just focus on making one thing great instead of doing two things poorly, but she really showed me the value of cyber. Public schools can do cyber education better for less money. When a district runs their own cyber school, there's better results and it costs less money. Right now, we spend $13,000 for a student going to cyber school if they don't have a special education IEP, and we pay $23,000 for a student with a special ed IEP to go to cyber school. If we were allowed to control the cost, we could provide that same money, that same education for about $3,500. The state mandates we overpay for this. If this were gasoline, if the state were making us pay $20 a gallon for gasoline, we would all be up at arms. But since it's a cyber school, I don't know why we're allowing this to happen. The funding comes out of our tax dollars, out of our property taxes, and it goes across the state to other places where we have no say over the quality of education that PENNCREST kids are getting. We're paying higher property taxes to educate these kids somewhere they can be in York or Lancaster or Newcastle. We have no say over it. There's not a level playing field as far as this is concerned. There's not the same state regulations or any of it. As a school board, there's nothing we can do. We can't vote not to do that. But what we can do is have our voice heard for the taxpayers and for the students and say that there's a better way to do this. We can provide the choice and be responsible to taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff.
Whether it be cyber school or homeschooling, those are signs that the schools aren't meeting the needs of the student. We need to figure out a way to meet those needs. Now, even with cyber schooling, which I've watched with my grandchildren, it did not work for them. And the reason it did not work for them because their parent was not into that sort of discipline. Neither were they. Okay, and we have to understand, going to as a cyber school, which is, I think, a great tool, you have to have a certain amount of discipline. How do we, as a school board, make sure we have that discipline? I think there should be a program available that somehow it is controlled by the school board or by the school in order to facilitate a better education for those students. After all, that's what they're there for. That's what we're here for, is the student and their education. And also with that, we also have to understand the parent must be involved. A parent, I've seen too many parents, they have, they're not involved. And that's why cyber schools don't work for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Deane.
There is a House bill and I believe a Senate bill concerning cyber school. And basically what it says is that if a local school district will run their own cyber school for their students, that the taxpayer money that would normally go to another cyber school would stay at home, would stay in their county. If that student was a PENNCREST cyber school. If the child and their parent decides to go to PA Cyber, for example, then they would pay that tuition. It would not come out of PENNCREST taxpayer money. It would be treated like it was a private school. That would be a huge savings to the taxpayers of PENNCREST. So we need to contact our legislators to make sure that they vote for that so that we can get cyber school back in the school district, get our kids back. They could be cyber schooled, but they could actually participate and the money would stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
I see the couple cases I've seen with cyber school, it is like he was saying that the parents aren't really involved. I think it's just because it's such a new technology. If I have to work with a computer, I'm pretty well lost. So if I would have a kid that had all computer classes, I really wouldn't be able to help him very much. So for me to help out with a cyber school situation, I can understand where, you know, this parent has to be more involved, but if you're not trained in that, you know, so I understand where the cyber school, if it could be incorporated into a classroom type, there's some kids that are introverted and they don't do well in school. There's some kids that are just, you know, in trouble when they're in school, but they still need to have that structure of being in a classroom. So if there could be a way to incorporate that where, you know, they're, I don't know, maybe the classroom's going on and, you know, they're logged in and participating, you know, at home, they're still getting a structure of a classroom and participating, but maybe they're doing it at their own pace and they're able to interact with the teacher and get a better grasp. But to have them on their own, you know, what 14-year-old is going to be disciplined enough to, you know, go from class to class to class during the day if they're home alone. So, you know, I can see where cyber school would fail in that position, but, you know, like they were saying in there, you're not going to get rid of it, and I don't think we should. It's a new technology, and I think we need to just find a way to make it work.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm a salesperson for public education. Being on the school board, I feel this is what I have to push. But the cyber school, you're right, it's here, it's never going to leave. There has to be ways to make it part of our district, which we are working on. The House bill and the Senate bill in front of our lovely politicians is a big part of that. And if that gets passed, it will help us tremendously. You can say what you want, but it's just under $2 million that we wrote checks for this year for cyber school. I don't know how you get those numbers any other way. That's $2 million out of our local budget, or I mean our brick and mortar budget, you know, and cyber school is a for-profit. That's why they have billboards and advertisements, and you see commercials on TV. They can do that because they make good money. Cyber school has a place. There's instances such as Miss Davis here, and a friend of mine, her child was in cyber school because of a learning disability he had, and it worked really well for him, and that was awesome. But there's also kids that use it as a crutch. They get out of school. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we did not have cyber school. It was public education. You got your butt out of bed, you went to school, you did your work, you come home, you did your homework, and you reported back the next day and did it all over again. It was your job. Now we're trying to make it easy on them. That's the way society is becoming. We have to learn to deal with it. I'll end right there.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to Mr. DeFrancesco. What can the district do to support programs like music and the arts? What can the school district do to support programs like music and the arts?
You asking if they're willing to support that?
What can the district do to support programs like music and the arts?
Well, the first thing that this could do is make sure that the program stays in place. You know, in music and art, I mean, it's part of the of some individual's future. You know, they probably like to be a musician, an artist, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is America, you know. Everybody's free to achieve whatever goal they want to achieve. And what we can do is to appropriate whatever money is available to make sure that the program stays on. And actually, more than that, I don't know what else can we do. Thank you.
Mr. Hicks.
In particular, right now, one thing that's going to have an effect on the music and art programs at least in some degree, is block scheduling. Block scheduling will keep students from participating necessarily in music, chorus, etc. for the entire school year, which will in effect limit what activities chorus and band are involved in during the school year, as in the special programs that they present. The school district, I think, needs to accept that music and the arts, and I'm going to call all of it the arts, are a primary focus for those students that need and want this. And as Luigi said, as part of their future, a lot of students go on and get into art and music as professional or in college. And what we need to do is to keep that in a prime focus.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you very much. We as a district, we decided to make financial decisions that reduced our music programs. We have less music teachers than we did before, and we moved them around to positions where they're not necessarily the best suited. We have some fantastic people in place now. We've put some people out there. If you see the band program that's out there in the elementary schools, it's on the rise. Also, if you look and you see the marching band program we have at Sagertown, we destroyed that program. We decided not to appoint a band director to that, and we didn't have any program here in place, and the students had no marching band, and we had to send them out to Maplewood. Half the students went out there, half of them stayed there, and I applaud these kids every time I see them in a football game. Now we have 8 kids in our marching band here at Sagertown, and if anyone happened to see on NPR, they talked about how good Sagertown marching band used to be, and they were nationally known, and we're down to 8 kids here because the school district did not make a plan as to what to do for these kids. We need to value it. When we talk about cutting unnecessary costs, we need to make sure that we value art and music as necessary costs. The very first thing I was ever elected to in my entire life was I was the president of the chorus in 1984. Graduated in 1985. Got a nice jacket that said president, said Maplewood Chorus on the back. Got to sing, I'm not going to sing now, but I got to sing Saturday Night Live, got to sing some amazing songs from the 70s and 80s. And from that, you learn more than what you think. It's not just about an appreciation of music or art, or if you're going to be a great singer, if you're going to be a great artist. It's appreciating the world around you. And you know, we are really making an effort, and it comes up in our discussions as to what to do going forward. But the decisions of the past have really haunted us, and they're going to be hard to come back for. We need to support the parents and support the kids, and we need to value this so that our kids have the best opportunities going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff.
I believe that the music and arts are just as important as math and science because it trains the mind to think. And I think we need to have the same emphasis in our school for the arts and science, arts and music. I know my niece who works as a graphic artist in Chicago. She got her education originally from high school and was very good at art. We need to be able to have those type of opportunities for our young people here too, so that they can evolve and get jobs in like the graphic arts, and you have that everywhere. So it's not just a job for someone that's going to make a mold or something like that of a model or something and paint it. It's a job that you can have that would help in advertisement and all sorts of other things. And I enjoy a good tune every now and then too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Deane.
The arts are absolutely crucial to any school district, and they are crucial to every single person in this room and in the audience. Where would we be without music? Where would we be without smiles? Where would we be? We wouldn't be. You have to have a balance between the arts and the academics. You will find children learn and retain if they sing. They learn math better. They learn to write. They can do cursive, which we don't teach anymore. Okay, we should, because anybody can draw a line. But you need those. We need tradespeople. We need people who need to learn how to think. And that's what arts do. That's what music does. That's what the arts do, whether it's shop class, art, library, family and consumer science, which was home economics when I was a teacher. Those things teach kids who are tactile learners. They can use their hands. Not everyone can take a book or an iPad and regurgitate what they've just read. They need to use their hands to show you. If you could test a child who is sensory tactile, they will be able to tell you an answer better than they can write it out for you. So the arts, whether it's chorus, any of them, are crucial to every child's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
That's one of my main things, cursive.
You wrote cursive.
Yeah, because how are they going to sign a check or sign a document or sign a contract?
Yep.
You put an X. So I think the music is very important, and as well as arts. I have two nieces. One's a very good is an emerging artist, and the other one's learning photography, and she just has a phenomenal eye for just the minutest little detail, and she'll take, you know, some great photography, and if there's no instruction or she don't have any way to encourage her, then you know, it's a big loss for her. And even as far as music, we're having a hard time finding, you know, a guitar instructor. I would think someone in PENNCREST would have, you know, some kind of lead to that, but it just seemed like it just isn't there anymore. It seems to me that there's a lot of emphasis placed on sports, and that has its own rewards for a lot of people, but there's people like me that I was not involved in sports at all. I gained nothing out of it. But I gained more out of, you know, music as a student when I was a kid. So you have to have a balance between the sports and the music and the arts too, because some benefit from one and some benefit from the other. And I think more people benefit from music and art later in life than they would if they were at high school football or basketball. So I think we just need to find a way to encourage them where it's beneficial and we can afford to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Arts and music, that's near and dear to my heart. I've said from the day one that every budget we will find money. We have to find money to keep arts and music alive. I was blessed last Friday to go to the fifth grade musical put on by Mr. Ashbaugh here at Secretary Elementary, and everybody in the class participated and they all had a blast. They did a fantastic job, and those were memories that those kids will have for the rest of their life. And even if they don't use it as a career or to make money at, it could be a hobby. It could be something they use throughout the rest of their life and just embrace it. Art. I remember Mr. Coral when I had him in 8th grade. I still remember what he was telling me about Shady. I don't know why, but I do remember that. These are two, art, music, shop, they're all important. Miss Deane hit it perfect, that kids learn in different ways and we're not all academic, and I was one of them. If it wasn't for art and music, and I can't sing, trust me, but if it wasn't for that and shop, it would have been tough for me. We have to make sure sports are important. I don't want people to think that I don't think that, but if I have to categorize it, to me, arts and music, shop, those are the top priorities in my mind. And we have to. It's not if we can. We have to fund them. And that's just our responsibility as a board to make sure that these students have these opportunities to do what I saw the 5th graders do the other day. It's very important, and it's lifelong lessons for them.
Thank you. Ms. Davis.
Music. Spent a lot of time on that topic the last couple of years. As much as I am grateful to the current board for all the improvements that we've made, I was very angry at the board for a long time, and I'm still kind of angry. with the cuts that were made to our music program. I stood out front of this building with several of the parents begging to keep our music program a couple years ago. And I know that things had to be done, but unfortunately, it really hurt a lot of our kids. The Sacred Town students lost their band, which was disgusting. I watched those kids come to Maplewood. They were an awesome group of kids, and what Maplewood and Sacred Town did together that year was amazing. We didn't feed the current high school program. So my daughter, who came home in 7th grade after her first day of marching band camp, and came home and said, "Mom, I finally found my people," after years of not quite fitting in here. This is the same kid who came home the other day in tears and said, "Mom, I've got 17 kids in marching band for my senior year. We're not even going to be able to compete." That makes me sick to my stomach, because Maplewood Marching Band, and I would imagine any of the marching bands in PENNCREST, has a reputation of being amazing. 17 kids, some of them who desperately want to be in marching band, but just don't feel the support because they've worked too hard and know it's not there. So I would just say, I know we've turned a corner, I know things are headed in the right direction, but cutting them any further and not working hard to get them back is simply not an option.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to our next question. We'll start with Mr. Hicks.
Back about 3 years ago, it's in September of 2016, the school board formally approved a policy about maintaining professional boundaries between adults who work in the district and the students. Is it really necessary to have a policy like that in place, that you have to have that in place, do you think?
As an educator, yes, a policy is necessary. It defines clear limits of what is and is not appropriate. As long as the policy allows for things like I have watched with elementary school teachers, where the teacher picked up a crying child and put that student in her lap and held the student through a program to keep the student comfortable where he could sit there and watch the program. As long as something like that is not considered inappropriate, allowances are made for necessary actions, then I agree that yes, it is necessary in today's world.
Thank you. Ms. Brooks?
Unfortunately, we do need policies like that. One of the most important things that schools can provide kids is a positive mentor, someone that's out there showing them things. We've heard, I think almost everyone here on the board, on the panel here, has discussed, parents' roles, what parents are doing, and how we need parents to do more and more. And unfortunately, that's not always happening. So kids need to have a relationship with parents. So the difficulty in this is we're putting barriers up between the teachers that we have and the students that need a positive role model, that need a mentor, someone that can help them out. But unfortunately, as with everything, you make your policies based on the worst case scenario. So unfortunately, we do need these boundaries, but it's really difficult. I think of the teachers and the positive influences I had in my life, and I could name them that I still see today. My first grade teacher, who I hadn't seen for 20 years, stopped at Trick or Treat here in Sagertown. She, Miss Hassett, I guess I did say her name, pulled her car over, got out of I've changed a lot from kindergarten to when I was 35 years old, and she recognized me, and she ran out of her car and gave me a big hug. And that would have been against policies if it would have been there back in first grade. So these are the relationships you want to have with teachers. These are relationships we try to build so that our kids know how to act and our kids can do better. We're not replacing parents, but oftentimes when we look at the role of schools, it's getting more and more. And so it's a tough balancing act where to do that. You want people to be involved and you want to have caring teachers, but we do, unfortunately, in policies like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff?
I agree with Mr. Hicks as far as what he said, but I do believe that any professional boundary that you have needs to be flexible in order to meet the needs of the child. Children today are sometimes lost, and the only people that find them are their teachers. I remember when I was teaching, I had some students who would come to me and talk to me after school. Now, I kept the door open, and you know, you have to be careful about those things, but it's unfortunate we're in such a litigious society today that you're afraid to be nice to someone. And we've got to be able to balance it somehow, that the teacher could be nice to a student without losing their head. So those are just the things I see there.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Deane?
Unfortunately, we do need to have boundaries, but I will tell you that as an educator of 38 years, if I had a child come up to me in the elementary school and give me a hug, I gave the hug back. I don't think there's an educator that I know in this district that would step over those boundaries. I think that teachers care about kids in many cases, especially the high school. Those teachers sometimes are surrogate parents to those kids. They come in and they touch base with those teachers every single day. But we do need boundaries. Unfortunately, with the world the way it is today, there are too many with no boundaries. And kids need structure. They need to know what's acceptable and what isn't. Hugs are acceptable. It is the one thing that fits everybody. You need a hug. And some days I had a student, unfortunately it was a senior boy, he saw his dog get killed as he was getting on the school bus. He got on the bus, he came to school. He was devastated. I was the guidance counselor. He came in, I gave him a hug. My door was wide open. This senior boy was bawling. I was not about to say to him, stand away from me. I gave him a hug. So I think there are boundaries, I think there are limitations, but you need to use your head with them. All yours.
Mr. Lynch?
Well, I don't have any kids, so I look at things a little differently. I think in an elementary school setting, yeah, I agree. You know, you need to have a more personal touch. But I'm thinking of like a 16-year-old girl coming up to a male teacher. As an educator, you've invested a lot of time and money into your profession, and you have a lot to lose. And there's some pretty troubled kids out there that, you know, can look for an excuse to cause trouble. So I don't see it so much as a problem with a female educator, you know, but a male, I think, especially today with the latest Me Too movements and things like that going on, you really have to be careful. And you said you always keep your door open and stuff, but I would go the extra step. And I mean, if I was a teacher, I'd want a camera in the classroom. I mean, it just, you know, it just kind of be the way I'd have to have it just for my own protection. You know, you have, it's your career, you know, it's your livelihood, you're supporting your family. You have to look out for yourself. You know, it's one thing to comfort a student that, you know, had something tragic happen, but it's another thing to put yourself in a bad position. And not only that, you put the school district in a bad position too, if they have to make a payout, and then all the publicity it brings. So there is quite the balance there. I guess a female don't look at it the same way as a guy might, because, you know, I look for the trap, you know, of something happening in some way that I could get in trouble. So you just kind of keep yourself clear of it. So it'd be kind of harder to be close to a female, you know, a girl student and stuff in your class as a guy, you know. But if you're a popular student, you know, or a popular teacher, you know, you just put yourself in a bad position.
Thank you. We'll have to stop you there. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, unfortunately, policies have to be in place in all aspects of education. A, to cover the district, and B, to cover the teachers and help protect the students. Yeah, I hate to say that we have to have that policy, because everybody here has made very good comment or points about it, but there's different strategies for elementary teachers and high school teachers and male, female, and all that. I'm thankful I'm not a teacher. I don't have to worry about that. It's got to be hard. We've had a couple instances in the past, and I pray to God we never have them ever again. And these policies were put in place to help prevent that. And we have to abide by them, and I hope that everybody else does the same.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
I think it's been pretty well covered, everything, most of the points that were made. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in, those policies have to be put in writing. We'll move it forward.
Steve Francesco?
Yeah, I'll say that the district is in the business to educate, nothing else. The PENNCREST policy clearly defines the interaction between students and adults. It's always better to prevent any wrongdoing rather than going through legal and personal trauma, either for the students or the adult involved. The district has already experienced one interaction years ago between an educator and a student, resulting in a heavy price for each. Problem always starts with an innocent touch or a smile or a supportive hug. So I would say let's keep everything on a professional level. Now, will I agree that if a student needs emotional support at certain times, say sure, but please stick with the policy in place. It's very clear, it's available on the internet, it's policy 824 for anyone who wants to see it. And that's all I have to say about it.
All right, thank you. We'll do one last question. We'll start with Mr. Brooks. PENNCREST has got 3 high schools, 3 attendance areas, Sagertown, Cambridge Springs, and Maplewood. We've seen Conneaut School District consolidate a few years ago. Should the PENNCREST School Board consider a consolidation of the 3 high schools into one, or maybe even just into 2 high schools, and why or why not?
Thank you. For at least 25 years, this has been something that's brought up at PENNCREST. I can show you the spot out by Weber Harris Ford where I was told we're building a new PENNCREST school for when Maplewood and Copperton combined. I can show you the spot in Venango where they told me we're combined Sagertown and Cambridge Springs. And this is something that is really, consolidation really has been a reason why we don't do things here at PENNCREST. We always think we're going to consolidate next year, so let's not do anything this year. We don't need a scoreboard that works at the football field, because what if we consolidate? We don't need to improve the building up here, because what if we consolidate? It's really been just a crutch that we've used as a district, really not to do anything, not to make the improvements we know we need. Conneaut did a great job when they combined out there, and it worked for them. It's not a money saver. It's not something that they're not saving less. They're not spending less out of Conneaut than we are here at PENNCREST, or they were before. At some point in time, it's realistic, but we just have to decide as a district, do we want to stay 3 schools and plan for that, and quit making this rumor that we're going to consolidate every single year. We did a study that said that we don't need to consolidate for at least 10 years, and at that point we'll look at it again. It's always something that needs to be looked at, but it's not something that we need to make all our decisions on what happens if we consolidate. If we consolidated, even let's say that we put Cambridge Springs came to Sagertown, Cambridge Springs would shrivel up. There would be so many less students coming to PENNCREST because the district really, if there's not a school there, then the town would go away. I see even Townville, when you see the elementary school left there and just moved slightly out of town, Townville is not the town that it used to be. Everything's on the table with every discussion that we make. If we need to consolidate for something, if it needs to be for schools, we need to look at that. If it needs to be for sports, we can look at that. We can look at how can we consolidate French classes. We can look at these things, but the different personalities at PENNCREST, each place has their own personality, and I think that we should strive to keep those 3 schools going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff?
That's a tough one.
That's why
I don't like consolidation at all. But at the same time, I understand it. It's a matter of funding. You're going to lose part of the culture that you have in the different communities if you consolidate. At the same time, I remember when they had the Randolph School and they had their own culture. And I remember when they had, different schools before they consolidated. I'm not so sure having a smaller district is the wrong way to go. As long as we can find ways to maybe combine some of the coursework, that you have for the students, let's maintain the best that we can for our students. At the same time, retain our cultural differences in the community, or community differences, I should say.
Thank you. Ms. Deane?
I'm not a fan of consolidation. This district is 405 square miles. Each attendance area is unique, absolutely unique. When Conneaut consolidated, they didn't have 405 square miles. I taught in Conneaut for 18 years. I don't see this district going to consolidation. It is not a money saver. You still have to maintain the buildings. You still have to maintain the property. It is not a money saver. With distance learning, with the different options we have for our students, for the classes that are small, we have options for the students. The bottom line is still needs to be the option for the students. What is going to give them the best opportunities with the monies we have? Close a school, you're not saving money. Close a school, it's not going to happen. If our numbers get down to where Conneaut's were with a class of 38 kids in all 3 attendance areas, then I think we have to have a discussion. But that's why we look 10 years out. We aren't flying by the seat of our pants. We look 10 years. What are the numbers? Last year's elementary kindergarten numbers were sky high for this district. This year, they're not that high. It flows and ebbs, and that's what we have to watch and look for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch?
No, she took just about all my thunder out of my
sorry.
phone, so.
She's good though.
She's tough act to follow. Yeah, I wouldn't like to see a consolidation either, because like you guys all said, Maplewood has their own culture out there, and Camber Springs is different than in Sagertown, and I don't think the students would enjoy being in each other's backyards, so to say. So if it's not needed right now, I can understand to try to make the cost savings, but if you still have to maintain the buildings, then what are you saving? You're just going to have longer transport times between schools. And it's a pretty big area. 400 square miles is a large area to cover and try to herd everybody into one school. You'd have to build a new school, wouldn't you? So how are you saving any money? Another 30-year mortgage.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been on the board, our past superintendent, I guess we'll call him, he brought up the school consolidation, and right then we all kind of, that's when the study was done, but I mean, at that time we was over about 3,000 students, I guess. We're at 2711, I think is what our numbers are to date. Yes, the numbers are dropping, and unfortunately, there's so much more involved in the district, and it's more than what the board can do to get people back in the area. That's a whole nother subject. Consolidating the schools, there's no way we can do it to save money. It's going to cost us money. It's going to be, what we may save on the buildings, we're going to spend it on busing. Hey, diesel fuel is what, $3.65 a gallon?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's not going down. Bus drivers, I don't know what you make, but it's not near enough. You don't have to tell me, but I figured you would. So when we're going to ask the bus drivers to spend even more time, not that they don't care for their kids, but we're going to ask them to spend more time on the road, more time for safety concerns. You know, winters, you know how the winters are in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can leave the school and it be sunshine and get home and have a foot of snow. Not uncommon. It just, recipe for disaster. And even when Cash did that, I think the numbers I saw on the paper, I believe, was millions of dollars that they had to reinvest in new uniforms and new, I can't remember the exact number, but it was millions of dollars. They ended up spending more than what they thought they were going to save. So for somebody to show about consolidation, I have to see some hard facts.
Thank you very much. Ms. Davis?
I was glad to hear that there had been an evaluation done, and that it was 8 to 10 years down the road, it would have to be looked at again. That makes sense. I think that any of these problems could have been avoided or maybe done differently, or issues if maybe we had been a little more realistic with evaluating things a little further in advance. Some things are just, you can't avoid them. What can you do? As far as the bus driver, and he says that would be just an absolute disaster. Not only for the reasons that were already mentioned, but when you say a little over 400 square miles for our district, until you've actually driven the perimeters of where we're picking these kids up, and the length of time that these kids, some of them were stuck, sometimes 3 to a seat in a stuffy bus, you wind up with not only logistical issues, but there are a lot of discipline issues that I think will become a problem. I know it needs to be reevaluated in the future, but it would be a mess.
Thank you. Mr. D. Francesca?
Consolidation of the 3 high schools with the constant loss of students, the future boards will have to come up with a solution. Is it feasible, though, to physically consolidate? I don't think so. You know, the territory the PENNCREST is responsible for is pretty large, you know, and you can't just abandon one. You can't put all the schools together in one building. No way that can be done anyway. Now, can the 3 schools be consolidated under one high school by name? You know, I would say, well, probably it could be. And have a PENNCREST high school instead of 3 separate high schools. Maybe that might be a savings in the long run. But for physically consolidated schools, I think it's not possible. Years ago, if I'm not mistaken, I remember correctly, the district hired a professional firm to tell us what would happen in 10 years, which means 2 years ago. The impact that the loss of students that we have in every year. You know, at this time, I cannot tell you what the results were because I've never seen the report. Mm-hmm. I don't think that any of the board members have seen the report. Mm-hmm. But what will happen in the future? You know, the future boards will have to figure out what to do because one solution might be consolidate all the 3 schools and have the kids run a separate school under PENNCREST. Thank you.
First of all, I graduated from a high school that had 2,500 students in it, grades 9 through 12. In the last high school I taught at in Texas, the school population in that school was 3,500 students. And that school now teaches 5,000 students in that high school. There are advantages to large numbers of students in a high school from the point of view that you can offer French multiple times, you can offer Spanish, you can offer all of these classes. You don't have to hire a separate teacher at 3 different schools to teach the same subject. The disadvantages. My daughter now rides on a school bus for over an hour going to school every morning. If we consolidated, where would we put the high school? How far would the buses actually have to run to work it out in a radial? I don't see putting students on a bus for an hour, much less for an hour and a half to 2 hours riding, just in the morning and the afternoon going to school. The other problem I can see, which has been spoken to, and I'll mention again, is the identity of the students and the population with the high school in that area. Each of the high schools is in a population area, and people in those areas identify with the school, and you would take some of that away from them. But as far as being a high school consolidated, that might be something that will have to be looked at in the future. That's it.
Thank you. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the questioning. Not kind of, it actually does bring us to the end of the questioning for this evening. We're going to give each of the candidates up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We're going to go in reverse order. So we'll start with Mr. Brooks, and we'll go down to Mr. Sleptzoff, but I'll end up getting the last word. But Mr. Brooks, you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Tribune for putting this together. Cool 101.7, Armstrong Cable for putting this all together. This is the second forum we've had in the last 2 weeks. The PENNCREST did a great job last week, and Randolph Fire Hall put something together so we could go out there and talk to people out there. These schools that we have here, they're important. The decisions we make matter. Things are starting to improve here at our district, but we have a lot of work to do. And we have people that are working really hard to improve our district, and there are some people that are working pretty hard to be obstacles to improvement and moving forward in our district. Taxpayers matter, but it's not just the current taxpayers, it's our future taxpayers, and those are our students. If we skip on our students, then they go out and they don't have the same opportunities that they need to have to succeed. One of the things that I've learned in the last year and a half being on the board is the school board is a lot of tough decisions, and it's not always this good decision or that good decision. It's here's two bad things that we have to make a choice from. Which one's the better of the choices? Something that I've found with government and with funding is when someone says they're cutting costs, they're not cutting costs. The federal government cuts costs by passing them down to the state. The state cuts costs by passing them down to the local districts, and the local districts cuts costs by passing them down to the parents and to the students. And that's where we really need to make a stop right there, is we're costing our parents more by not providing what we need to here as a district. We're costing our students more because they're not going to be able to go out and earn what they need to do as a student and as a worker, and we can do better by everybody in our district if we decide to do that. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody coming out, and I hope that on May 21st you would consider me for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Hicks, you're up next.
Again, I would like to thank everyone for putting on the forum, and thank the people that are here in attendance. And for those people that take time to listen and watch this program, I thank you for being interested in the school district and the students. My primary concern is for the students and their future. My concern is also for the taxpayer. My concern is effective use of the funds, but for the best quality education possible for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeFrancesco.
Well, what I'd like to say is this. Public education is the most important venue to mold our responsible, productive, law-abiding citizens who will be the foundation of our great nation. Our education system has the responsibility to not only to assure the graduate students are proficient with the 3 R's, but also to be knowledgeable about the great freedom and opportunities our republic, and I want to repeat that, republic, has bestowed on us Americans. I intend to push PENNCREST administration to do just that, considering what's going on right now in our country. We definitely don't want no socialist Democrats, or socialist, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
You know, it's funny, when I considered running for school board, I talked myself out of it for quite a while. Then I looked at the credentials of all the other candidates, and I said to my husband, I said, there's just no way. I'm so average. I don't have all of these credentials. I don't have all this background. These 2 forums kind of speak to that same insecurity for me. I sit here and I hear all the data and the numbers and everything that everyone else is much more familiar with than I am. But at the same time, I'm kind of sitting here biting my tongue because as average as I am, the time that I spend is with our kids, whether it's my own 4 children. I claim a lot of the other kids, my bus kids, my band kids, my football kids, our teachers. I'm more of a conversation person. This makes me very uncomfortable. But you and I in a room talking about the issues of our district, I'll spend hours. And I will fight tooth and nail for any one of those kids, any one of our teachers, to make sure that they all have the resources that they need to make PENNCREST back to what it used to be and to continue in the right direction. So I thank you all for coming. Please tell your friends. I don't know how many of those of us that are that average really understand how important this election is, that it really does impact our families. It makes me sad when there's not many people in the audience. But if we can get the word out there to vote on May 21st and really look for the candidates that are looking out for our kids, I think it would be the best thing for our future of our entire community. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. I tell you, this election, I hate to say it, it comes down to 2 choices. Either you want people who will invest in the children and make sacrifices if need be, or we'll just worry about not raising taxes and, hey, if we have to cut it, we'll cut it. Because that's what our district did a while back. And we cut specific programs, and now people are asking, why are we lower on the test scores now? Well, let's see here. What we did back then has repercussions. It's a ripple effect. If we don't want to raise taxes, that's fine. We can't spend more money, so let's cut this, let's cut that. We have to invest in our students. There's no other choice. There is no other option. Yes, sales tax would be better, sure. But let me tell you, if the state took away our property taxes and did it with state tax, who's to say where the sales tax, who's to say where that money's gonna go? It's gonna go to the politicians and the cities who scream the loudest. We're not gonna be part of that. We're a little old PENNCREST school district, not little in size, but they're not gonna hear us. Taxes stink. Nobody has to tell me that. I just wrote a really nice check for taxes. Trust me, I'd rather spend that money elsewhere. But guess what? I see all these kids when I walk through these schools. I don't mind paying a dime. And if it's an extra 20 bucks and somebody doesn't have it, there are programs out there to help those people. But 20 bucks a year, that's less than $2 a month. I mean, come on, people. I know it's tough for some, but there are programs to help you. The other thing is, our commissioners need to go back through Crawford County. We haven't had a good assessment since 1969. Maybe it's time we go through Crawford County and get a proper assessment and get a lot of these new buildings, garages, additions, and all these home upgrades. My house value is still at $30,000, and that's ridiculous. The county is not helping us in this problem either.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Lynch?
Well, I just see a lot of problems that need addressed and see a lot of good ideas I've heard. There's some new technologies that we just need to incorporate, try to keep students interested in these in the classes that they struggle in. And it's not going to work. Cyber doesn't work on every class, but there's some classes that they'll excel in, and there's others that we just need to get back to the basics. You can watch videos on TV about interviews, and they're interviewing college kids that don't know how many states we have. They don't know what war was fought for independence. They don't even know who fought in the Civil War. I mean, these are all just ridiculous. And that's what made me want to get involved with the school district, just seeing the state of our education. And I know that doesn't really follow through with PENNCREST. You know, we have pretty good programs as far as that's concerned, but there has to be a way to get kids interested. There has to be, with the way computer can be used in classrooms, why can't you make a boring subject interesting? There has to be teachers out there that have a way to instruct kids that make it really fun class, even the most boring of classes. So I think that's something we should strive for, to keep everybody involved and engaged in class.
Thank you very much. Ms. Deane?
I want to thank everybody for coming, those in the audience, Cool 101, the Tribune for having us, for Sagertown for hosting us. I hope that everyone gets out and votes. It is a crucial vote for PENNCREST School District. You need to vote. The taxpayers need to get out. Their voices need to be heard. You've got to consider kids first. If we don't have a future. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Please get out and vote.
Thank you. Mr. Sleptzoff?
We need to continue having the concern of the students first, because they're the ones that are going to go out there and get the jobs to continue to maintain our society. Our society is a reflection of us, therefore our schools are a reflection of us as well, and they will reproduce us for good or bad. We need to get control of our educational programs. We need to look at all the programs, state, federal, as well as local, and decide what is working and what isn't, and then improve on them. And the same thing with cyber school or homeschooling. We need to help those people that are involved with that get a better feel for it, or try to help them more. We need to control it too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, tonight's forum will be shown on Armstrong Cable, their Channel 23 and Channel 100. Kevin from Armstrong told me that the first viewing will be Friday, May the 10th at 8 p.m., and there'll be a follow-up viewing on Saturday, May the 11th at 2 p.m. Again, we do want to thank the candidates for showing up tonight. We did have 8 of the 9. We had with us tonight Jeff Brooks, Harry Hicks, Luigi DiFrancesco, Jennifer Davis, Timothy Brown, Brian Lynch, Gerry Deane, and Bill Sleptzoff. We do thank them for coming out tonight and answering the questions. We also want to thank the audience that's been with us here tonight at Sagertown High School, and thank PENNCREST School District and the high school. They let us use the room gratis, which we appreciate very much, to get this information out to folks. We also want to thank those of you at home who are watching on tape delay at this point, and we do want to thank Cool 101.7 FM and Armstrong for being here tonight. A reminder, don't forget about the Democratic candidates for Meadville City Council. They'll be questioned on Monday, May the 13th at 7 o'clock. That's going to be a public forum at the Lou Davies Community Center on Park Avenue in downtown Meadville. The Tribune is going to be there, and our media partners, Armstrong and Cool 101.7 FM, have been invited as well to provide live coverage. We do want to remind you to get out and vote for the candidates of your choice in the various races that are coming up on May 21st. For Rick Green and the Meadville Tribune, I'm Keith Gushard. Have a good evening.
Thank you.